What happens when a prince dials a number he's called his whole life? And this time, no one answers. Not voicemail, not a polite aid, not even a cold, formal rejection. Just silence. And sometimes, silence is louder than any royal decree. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. There are moments in life that don't explode. They don't shatter windows or dominate headlines, at least not right away. They arrive quietly. They sit with you. They sink in. According to multiple insiders who claim knowledge of the situation, this was one of those moments. Late, private, urgent, a call that was never meant to be historic, but became exactly that. Because this wasn't a press statement. This wasn't a lawyer-to-lawyer negotiation. This wasn't a public feud dressed up for the cameras. This was a son reaching for a father and finding nothing on the other end. Now pause for a second. Before we even talk about money, before we touch the words bailout or blocked or that chilling phrase, you will riot in jail, we need to understand why this call mattered so much. Because in royal life, access is everything. Not titles, not crowns, not castles. Access. Who can reach whom? Who gets answered? Who gets delayed? And who, suddenly, gets erased from the call sheet altogether? The moment before the call. Picture the pressure. Again. Allegedly, according to sources close to the situation, this wasn't a casual check-in. This wasn't nostalgia or reconciliation. This was urgency. The kind that makes your hands shake just enough to notice. The kind that turns minutes into hours. The kind that convinces you that this call has to work, because if it doesn't, there is no plan B. Harry, we're told, had already exhausted other routes. Friends? Limited. Advisors? Careful. Intermediaries? Suddenly cautious. And here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. When everyone around you starts speaking in legal language, it's usually because emotional language has failed. Words like, "We'll get back to you. That's above my pay grade. We need clearance. The palace will consider." Consider. Not respond. Not help. Consider. So the decision, whether impulsive or inevitable, was made. Call him directly. Not the institution. Not the office. Not the machine. The man. Why this call was different from all the others. Let's be honest. This wasn't the first strained call between father and son. That much is obvious. But this one carried weight the others didn't. Why? Because it wasn't about feelings. It was about consequences. Serious ones. The kind that don't care about lineage. The kind that don't pause for royal protocol. The kind that don't bow. And that's what makes this moment so terrifying. Because when consequences stop respecting your name, you realize something brutal. You are on your own. The ring that echoed. The call goes out. International lines. Secure channels. At least, ones that used to be secure. Ring. Ring. No answer. Now here's where things get interesting. Because according to insiders, this wasn't immediately alarming. The king is busy. Schedules are packed. Meetings overlap. So the assumption? He'll call back. Minutes pass. Then longer. Then nothing. And that's when a different realization reportedly crept in. Not he's unavailable. But he knows. He knows who's calling. He knows why. And he's choosing not to respond. That's not neglect. That's a decision. Silence as a weapon. Let's talk about silence. Silence isn't passive in families like this. It's strategic. When you don't want to say no, but you want the message received, you say nothing. Because silence does three things at once. It avoids commitment. It preserves plausible deniability. It forces the other person to fill in the blanks. And humans are terrible at filling in blanks calmly. We catastrophize. We spiral. We assume the worst. Especially when stakes are high. Especially when time is short. Especially when you're used to doors opening, and now they aren't. The second attempt. Yes, there was reportedly a second attempt. Not immediately. Because there's pride involved here. And fear. You don't want to look desperate, even when you are. But urgency has a way of overriding dignity. Another call. Another ring. Another unanswered line. And now, something shifts emotionally. This isn't a missed call. This is a message. From father to institution. Here's the brutal pivot. At some point, again, according to sources, the realization set in that this was no longer a personal matter. This was institutional. And institutions don't panic. They don't rush. They don't rescue unless it serves a purpose. Which raises an uncomfortable question. What if helping Harry no longer served the crown? Sit with that. Because if that calculation was made, even briefly, it changes everything. The gatekeepers close in. After the unanswered calls, the next move wasn't emotional. It was procedural, reaching out through staff, private secretaries, trusted aides, names that had once opened doors. And what came back? Delays, deflections, carefully neutral language. Nothing overtly cruel, just distant. And distance, when you need immediacy, feels like abandonment. The emotional toll of being unanswered. Imagine this from a human perspective, not a royal one. A son calling his father in a moment of crisis, and realizing the relationship has changed so fundamentally that even crisis no longer grants access. That does something to a person. It reframes every memory, every past rescue, every public show of unity, every speech about family. It makes you ask, were those moments real or conditional? Audience question, direct address. Let me ask you something, and be honest. If you were in trouble, real trouble, and the one person you believed would always answer your call didn't, would you feel angry? Or would you feel afraid? Because those are very different emotions. And according to insiders, fear came first. The weight of time. Time matters here. Not days. Not weeks. Hours. Every unanswered hour wasn't just silence. It was risk. And the longer the silence stretched, the clearer the message became. Whatever Harry was facing, he was expected to face it alone. No bailout. No intervention. No royal safety net. At least, not yet. The first crack in the illusion. This is where the illusion finally broke. The illusion that blood outranks optics. That family trumps reputation. That fathers save sons no matter the cost. Because in this moment, the crown didn't look like a family. It looked like a firewall. And then came the realization. According to one source, there was a moment, a quiet one, where Harry allegedly stopped trying to call. Not because he didn't care, but because he understood something devastating. The answer wasn't coming. And that's when desperation reportedly turned into something else. Something darker. Something louder. Something that would soon be summarized in a phrase so shocking, so chilling, it would ripple through every layer of this story. A phrase we haven't unpacked yet. A phrase that sounds less like advice and more like a verdict. What would you do if a single number could change your fate and no one would touch it? For Harry, that number was allegedly $100 million. And asking for it wasn't just bold. It was explosive. The request that shook the palace. According to insiders, the bailout was far more than a simple transfer of funds. Think about it. $100 million isn't pocket change. It's the kind of number that can buy a house, a fleet of vehicles, or an entire private island. And that's exactly why it mattered. Not because Harry wanted to flaunt it, at least not entirely, but because in the world he had suddenly found himself in, money was survival. Legal battles, security costs, unexpected fines, and yes, the very real possibility of prison-like confinement without access to the luxuries that once shielded him from real consequences. A king's child doesn't typically ask for $100 million, and a king doesn't typically say no. Yet, that's exactly what allegedly happened. Why the sum was so shocking? Let's break it down. $100 million is roughly the combined annual salaries of multiple British ministers for decades. It's enough to fund several charity programs simultaneously. Ironically, the kind Harry had championed publicly. For a single individual, even a prince, it's astronomical. The palace insiders reportedly weren't debating whether it was legal. They were debating whether it could ever be approved. Because once you say yes to $100 million, the optics explode. Public outrage. Why should taxpayer money rescue a royal from himself? Family optics. What message does this send to the next generation? Global optics. Even kings have limits, and this might be seen as weakness. In short, it wasn't just a financial decision. It was a psychological, political, and symbolic one. The palace brainstorm. According to sources, once the request hit the right desks, meetings were called. Private aides, legal advisors, royal accountants. They dissected the number. They ran simulations. They calculated every potential fallout. And here's what they allegedly concluded. Paying this off is not just a favor. It's an admission of failure. And failure can't be shown. Think about that. The same institution that had once publicly embraced Harry and Meghan's philanthropic work was now weighing the cost of a bailout against its reputation. And reputation, in this world, often outweighed loyalty. The human angle. But let's not forget the human cost. $100 million isn't just a number. For the person asking, it's hope. It's survival. It's a lifeline thrown into a stormy sea. Imagine dialing your father, your most powerful ally, your last hope, and asking for something so huge it might even shock him. Now imagine his response is not, "We'll see," or "Call your lawyer," or "Let's negotiate." It's silence. And that silence, insiders suggest, was deafening. The leverage Harry thought he had. Here's where the story gets even more complicated. Harry reportedly believed he had leverage. His celebrity, the media attention surrounding his predicament, the sympathetic allies in government and business. He thought, surely the king knows paying this saves everyone trouble. Surely he'll act. But he underestimated two things. The palace's willingness to let him twist in the wind. How personal this refusal would feel. And that miscalculation, insiders claim, set the stage for conflict that went far beyond money. A bailout versus a lesson. One insider allegedly said, this wasn't about the money. It was about sending a message. Think about it. By refusing a $100 million bailout, the palace didn't just say no. It said, you are accountable for your choices. We will not intervene to shield you. Your title doesn't guarantee safety anymore. In other words, the refusal was both financial and symbolic, a masterstroke of control. The psychological weight of $100 million. Now let's humanize this for a moment. For someone who grew up with privilege, $100 million isn't just a number, it's reassurance. And when it's denied, it's panic disguised as disbelief, fear disguised as frustration, isolation disguised as reality. According to insiders, this is when Harry allegedly began to realize his father wasn't just refusing money, he was withdrawing support entirely. And that's a dangerous realization for anyone, even a prince. The public versus private divide. To the public, this could look like a simple feud. But behind closed doors, sources say, it was much darker. Every aide, every message, every meeting contributed to one undeniable conclusion. Harry's safety net had been removed. Not gradually, not with warning, suddenly, decisively. And for someone used to constant protection, that abrupt withdrawal of support can feel like a prison cell closing slowly around you. The question everyone asks. At this point, you might be asking, why not negotiate? Surely $100 million is negotiable. Well, insiders claim negotiations were attempted, but blocked. Every attempt to introduce a mediator, every intermediary trying to soften the blow, was allegedly stopped at the highest levels. Why? Because the palace reportedly wanted clarity. No compromises, no excuses, no ambiguity. It wasn't personal. It was power. Audience question, direct address. Imagine that. You're desperate. You reach out. You propose a solution, one that is, by any standard, massive. And the answer is still no. Would you feel anger? Betrayal? Shame? Fear? Now imagine being in the public eye while all of this is happening. The pressure doesn't just double, it multiplies. And insiders claim that's exactly what happened. The three words that shocked a prince. According to insiders, after Harry's urgent plea for a $100 million bailout, the response was delivered, not with a lecture, not with a negotiation, not with a discussion, but in three chilling words. The sources describe them as, we will not. Simple, direct, uncompromising. No context. No reassurance. No explanation. Three words that instantly communicated, you are on your own. And here's why that matters. In royal life, words are weapons. A speech can signal policy. A decree can shape nations. And a single response, stripped of tone, can destroy relationships. Three words, delivered through palace channels, reportedly carried the full weight of authority and the full emotional impact of parental rejection. The power of brevity. It's fascinating how brevity can hurt more than a long tirade. Imagine expecting a dialogue, a discussion, even a refusal that includes reasoning. Instead, we will not. Nothing softens the blow. Nothing explains intention. Nothing leaves room for hope. According to insiders, Harry was left with two options. Accept it. Question everything. And in that split second, reportedly, he did both. Why the king didn't expand? Some may ask, why not elaborate? Why not explain that it was about optics, about reputation, about strategy? According to palace sources, silence, or near silence, is often intentional, avoids leaks, prevents misinterpretation, maintains control. And in this situation, the alleged calculation was brutal but clear. If we explain, we dilute the message. If we justify, we invite debate. 3 words keep authority absolute. In other words, the king reportedly wasn't just saying no. He was teaching a lesson. The emotional impact on Harry. 3 words. That's all it allegedly took to fracture more than finances. It fractured trust. Trust in family. Trust in the institution that once protected him. Trust in himself. Insiders say Harry reportedly felt a mix of disbelief, anger, and heartbreak simultaneously. Imagine it. Calling the one person you believe will save you, and being told, without nuance, that the help will never come. And the kicker? This was after previous family support. This wasn't a first-time disappointment. It was the culmination of years of tension, public scrutiny, and private disappointments. The ripple effect in the palace. The 3-word response didn't stay private for long. According to sources, palace aides and intermediaries immediately realized the magnitude. Some reportedly worried about Harry's next moves. Some debated whether leaks were inevitable. Some quietly questioned, have we crossed a line? Because when authority is exercised with such finality, it creates ripples. Ripples that extend far beyond the person you intended to control. Strategic silence versus personal betrayal. Here's the delicate balance. From a strategic standpoint, these 3 words were reportedly a calculated move. From a personal standpoint, they were perceived as a betrayal. And insiders claim that's where the tension truly escalated. Harry, accustomed to a certain level of respect and communication, allegedly interpreted this as, I am disposable when it suits the crown. It's one thing to be denied money. It's another to be denied dignity. And 3 words can do both. The immediate aftermath. Sources describe the scene as emotionally electric. Aides reportedly tried to mediate. Messages and intermediaries were sent. Calls were attempted again. But according to reports, all efforts were ultimately futile. The 3 words had closed the conversation before it even began. And that closure, according to insiders, set the stage for what happened next, the complete block of contact.